Hello everyone, Alanctus back with another deck tech here. This time it is a Bant Reclamation deck. Um, we are on the mill plan, so we're gonna organize this a little bit better so you can see what the way we win is. This is our primary setup. We're trying to get Psychic Corrosion down and as many Wilderness Reclamations as possible. We have these to interact. The sweepers, instant speed is good. It works really well with Wilderness Reclamation, especially if we can go turn 2 Growth Spiral into a Wilderness Reclamation, untap, and settle. That puts us in a really good spot. Absorb is there to prevent us from just outright losing to control decks. Dawn of Hope is a secondary win condition. Its primary goal is actually the pay 2 to draw card whenever you gain life. Um, with that, there are 4 Ritual of Rejuvenation and 4 Revitalize. If we have a Dawn of Hope, basically it turns into 4 mana draw 2, which is the exact same rate as Chemister's Insight. Same Ritual of Rejuvenation isn't as efficient, but it is still good. And the big thing is these two really shore up the matchup against aggro. Clear the Mind is here so we don't deck ourselves. There is an argument for only playing 2, but I like 3 because there is a chance that the first one gets countered or something like that. And if you're only playing 2 and 1 or 2 get countered, you just outright lose most of the time unless you play a very early corrosion. Other than that, the lands are fairly standard. There are 2 Memorial to Genius, which we can sack fairly aggressively because we can simply recur them with Clear the Mind later on, or pseudo recur them at least. And Arch of Arazka, it's not too hard to get to Ascend in this deck. Um, these are the only permanents we're actually playing, but with Growth Spiral and then just trying to effectively dirtle as hard as possible, it's not that difficult to get enough lands and a few enchantments onto the field and effectively cheat having Ascend when we're not actually playing a creature-based deck or a go-wide deck. Um, for matchups, pretty good against anything that's a little bit slow, other than Esper Control. Esper Control can be really difficult. If they get a Teferi and then just start countering stuff, that's really hard to deal with. The advantage is on there is a good chance that we can just get out a Wilderness Reclamation and start cantripping through our deck through for absorbs and prevent them from actually preventing us from fulfilling our game plan. It's a bit awkward, but that's kind of our best way around it. And then Dawn of Hope helps in that matchup. You can always just sink all of your mana from Wilderness Reclamations into Dawn of Hope and make a bunch of 1/1s and start trying to kill off their planeswalkers. Or force them to start using mana as a removal versus counter spells for our actual game plan. Mono red is questionable at best. Uh, the rituals and revitalizes definitely help against it, and then the wraths can be good, but just straight life gain tends to be our best plan there. Otherwise, there's all of the random mid-range stuff like that. Those are 50-50. It just depends on how aggressive of a start and how much meaningful interaction they have for what this deck is trying to do. After that, um, I'm going to be getting into the games. I will be back in a moment. Here we are for game one. This is definitely a mulligan. No spells we can actually cast. This is definitely a better hand. A bit clunky. I think I'm going to go ahead and scry that to the bottom. hoping to just draw some action. Okay, looks like match 1 up against Esper Control or Esper Acuity. That's actually a bit better of a matchup since they don't play a ton of meaningful interaction against us. No reason to fire off anything on my turn yet here. Go ahead and Rejuvenation on their end step. They shocked one in, I'll shock one in, see what they think. Okay, so I'm just going to go for the Wilderness Reclamation. If he gets countered, he gets countered. So that ate a negate out of their hand. And now, didn't draw a third blue source, which is annoying. But we'll go ahead and run out the corrosion, and it resolved. So unless they're holding a Mortify or a Binding, that is an interesting one. See if they have a counterspell for this. Of course they do. That's basically how I'm going to be forced to win. Is digging for the other one, the other Cleansing Nova, to destroy the Ixalan's Binding. In the meantime, though, just going to sit with counterspells up. Gonna go ahead and try and shuffle that back in. Not great odds, but we have essentially the same number of cards in the deck as when we started the turn. It's just now 2 of them are Cleansing Novas versus 1. Bit better probability of actually hitting what we want. Okay. Against this low control matchup, we've ascended without actually putting any real permanents onto the board, or at least none that stuck. Only have 3 untapped blue sources. Gonna go ahead and hold on to the absorb for the moment. It really wants to tap basics even though I'm holding absorb, which is really annoying. Did draw the Cleansing Nova. It still really wants to tap my basics. That's getting really annoying. They can go ahead and do that. Take that back and accidentally overtap my mana. Not too big of a deal here. So Mortify, Absorb. They didn't have anything else, or at least nothing else they could cast. And here comes Teferi. Wouldn't be too surprised to see a tuck, but we'll see. Looking for a more permanent answer to what I'm doing. Okay, Kaya is annoying, since we are trying to replay stuff from our graveyard. Her eating the graveyard is tedious. Gonna go ahead and pass the turn back there. Drawing another Reclamation essentially seals up the game, but we'll see. It's kind of 50-50 if they have the removal or counterspell in hand immediately. I am not sure what they want to take here. Yeah, Clear the Mind is probably the right choice. There's a third one somewhere in the 35. And they are just trying to go on a more aggressive win here. Yeah, it definitely has to take the corrosion. This will kill our Dawn of Hope, but we'd way rather have the corrosion than the Dawn of Hope. Ah, didn't get the stop set in time. It's a bit awkward. Once something has gone to resolution, you can't actually stop it mid-animation. Our opponent has to figure out a way to get rid of one or both of these through multiple absorbs. We can cast two in the same turn. Okay, so we should win as soon as we untap. There we go. And that is game one. I will be back in a moment with game number two. Back for game number two, and this is definitely a keepable hand. A little bit iffy on the mana. We would prefer to be able to growth spiral on turn two, and we actually will be, so that's good. Mono red is easily the worst matchup we have. But we do have the untap into Wilderness Reclamation into Settle the Wreckage all on the same turn cycle, which is good. And eating 2 Steamkins is definitely a good use of the Settle. If they have a haste creature, they will play it pre-combat, which only gives the Settle the Wreckage more value. That is interesting, though. Puts us 1 short of dead. Hopefully they have something sorcery speed and this just ends their turn. And ideally we'll find more life gain off of the ritual. Okay, our opponent is empty-handed. They have approximately a third of their land on the field now. Most are running between 17 and 19. It's kind of the high end. We're at 10. They only have 1 card. It is a Steamkin, which is definitely annoying. The Steamkin represents the ability for the mono red deck to just throw out a ridiculous amount of damage in a single turn. But going up to 17 life definitely puts us at a good spot to just win this game. End of turn, I'll cast the Chemisters from my hand. No real reason to do it now. There's definitely no reason to sack the Memorial yet. Okay, so Revitalize, paying 2, basically turns it into a technically more efficient Chemister's Insight, because we're drawing the same number of cards as we would off of Chemisters, but with the upside of gaining 3 life. They did draw a land, definitely good for us, not so much for them. Go ahead and settle again, just don't want them to have any threats. Ritual isn't as efficient there, couldn't draw the extra card, but go ahead and run it out. I would like to hit a... Yeah, no. Not going to do that yet. Go to my end step. With that on the stack, go ahead and float. Draw a card, nothing I really care to cast. Go ahead and pass. Or at least not cast right now. End of their turn, I'll activate the Dawn of Hope. I'm at 23. Taking 4 damage is an easy choice. Nothing interesting off of the draw. I would really like to hit a corrosion. Yeah, just gonna lose some value and pass the turn. That drew them almost nothing, which is really good. The electrostatic field is totally fine. Just gonna activate this a bunch of times. Or 2. So let me draw 3 more cards and go up to 23 again. So in 25 cards, there are 5 that we really want to draw. More Wilderness Reclamations is good. Psychic Corrosion is definitely what I want, though. That would just seal the game away. Or some combination of that. If we can get one of each, that would definitely end the game pretty much on the spot. Okay, there's one. Absorb is good, but I don't know that they actually have anything they could play that warrants playing it immediately. I forgot to have a stop set. It's a little annoying. But most of what I can do is at instant speed anyway, so it shouldn't hurt that much in the long run. And if they do decide to go for the risk factor, I'll just absorb and draw a card with the Dawn of Hope trigger. Assuming they don't just concede. Go ahead and activate the Arch. It's kind of 50-50 whether I go for the Arch or the Chemist's Insight here. I'm using the Arch since I'm most likely going to be clearing the mind anyway. So just shuffling back in the Chemisters instead of permanently exiling them seems a bit better here. And I think our opponent may just be on the timeout plan since they are a mono red deck and we are at 23 with multiple life gain sources on the field. And they don't know it, but we can counter and gain more life off of anything they did actually try to play. Actually, I'm going to activate the Memorial to Genius here. Go ahead and draw a couple of cards. We're going to be shuffling it back in anyway. So we are shuffling back in 3 lands, but the majority of what's going back in is card draw effects. And our opponent has officially timed out. So now we just have one more rope to sit through. Make sure I set a stop. Go for the rub-in. The second Wilderness Reclamation is basically just icing on the cake at this point. Don't really need it. I think there's potential... Well, I do need to draw 14 cards. I'm going to go ahead and start off with a Clear the Mind. And as soon as this rope runs down, we can basically just cast all of our spells and not have to wait for them, which will make this go faster. Didn't draw a card, draw a spell, so just going to clear the mind for effectively no value. No reason to attack, I don't have any more mana up. Let the first one go, Vitalize, and draw a card off of the Dawn of Hope trigger. As soon as I get to it, and this is just going to be a bunch of me tapping lands and eventually untapping and my opponent losing the game. Not exceptionally exciting, but it is pretty fun to get to this state of the board, especially against a mono red deck that's just trying to kill you as fast as possible. It wasn't the best mono red draw possible, but it was a pretty good one. The 2 Steamkins to start the match off had a lot of potential to get there, especially when they both became 4/4s really quickly. But at this point, this one is over. Okay, so that's 10. I need to draw one more card. That is 12. Managed to draw exactly 14 cards and end the game. Just discard some random cards, don't care. And I will be back in a minute with game number 3. Here we go for game 3. Get to go first. This is a pretty good opening hand. Turn to Revitalize. Puts us in a good spot. Do need to draw a 4th land, and there it is. Gonna go ahead and run this out. Blue-red could be Drakes or Phoenix. Or a throwback Jeskai control from previous standard. We'll see. Gonna shock that in. Let them think we have something. Which we do. It is a Ritual of Rejuvenation, which is not exactly good, but it is something. They most likely don't have a counterspell. It passed pretty quick. They do. Ah, Disdainful Stroke, so couldn't have canceled, or couldn't have countered the ritual. Do they have another one? Hopefully they have some sort of sorcery speed removal for this. Or Blink of an Eye to draw a card. Okay. This may be some sort of Jeskai Storm deck. There have been a few of those running around with Niv-Mizzet, Thousand Year Storm, things of that nature. If they play nothing, then we get to... Oh, that is definitely worth absorbing. Run both of those out, and getting to untap with Wilderness Reclamation. So, this is pretty bad. We had no interaction for Ral, and so now there's a good chance we just lose. Assuming they go for his emblem on their turn. See what they think of a Clear the Mind as a 3-mana draw 1. Okay. Okay, this is an interesting board state. I'm not sure if it's possible for me to win from this point. If 30 and drawing 2 cards off of every spell means that after 15 spells, that is something I can work with. Yeah. So chemisters, basically I'm going to try and play as many spells as possible and force them to deck themselves. It's a bit awkward, but I don't know that I have another route to victory. Teferi's not good. He does have the advantage for me of potentially making them deck faster, but that's not something to count on at all. Okay, nothing I want to play right now. I'd rather force them to counter on their turn. So the plan is to settle into an absorb if they try to counter it, into revitalize end of turn, or chemisters, depending on what they play. Or they could just play 5 spells and kill us. Hmm. Oh, they misclicked. Okay. Run out revitalize, see if they do anything. I'm gonna ditch one of the absorbs. Might not be right, but it's what I'm doing. We'll see if it pays off or not. Yeah. Going to try and absorb the Sinister Sabotage. I'd rather just get the spells out of my hand and force them to draw cards than hold it. They do only have to play 2 spells to kill me. I think I'm just dead. Assuming they have like 2 card draw spells, which wouldn't be out of the picture here. And that's attacking with Nezahal, playing 2 card draw spells, and me dying. Yep, that'll be game. Okay. That one was close. They did almost get decked anyway. They only had 4 cards left. I'll be back in a minute with the next one. Here we go for game 4. Last match was definitely close. Hopefully we can get there with this one. Okay, this is an awkward hand. I think I'm gonna keep it and just risk them playing interaction of some kind. Um, yeah. I'm gonna pay 2 life and get it out there. This lets me growth spiral. Hopefully you can just accelerate past him. Be really surprised if someone countered a turn 2 growth spiral. Run out Dawn of Hope. This would be the counter target they're looking for. Or not. And if they are mono blue, Blink of an Eye is essentially the only interaction they have for an on the field Dawn of Hope. If you really want to counter Revitalize, feel free. Not a blue source. Not the greatest. Okay, now if you're going to counter something, Wilderness Reclamation is a must counter. There you go. Mono blue is annoying, but if they are on the counterspell only plan, that could be really good. I'm just going to go ahead and pass. Missing a land drop hurts. But I think in response to attackers, making a token is a good spot. Since it saves my life total, actually increases it, and they don't get to draw a card off of the Curious Obsession. And I can basically do this indefinitely since they don't actually have a way to interact with this, other than playing Tricksters or other bounce spells if they have them, to bounce the tokens pre-combat or pre-damage. But effectively, I can do this until I draw a 6th land. Right there. It's tapped, so that's awkward. Untapped would have been better because then Dawn of Hope, activate to make a token, and then use the trigger to draw a card. My opponent's got to get pretty annoyed with this eventually. And I would imagine their hand is basically just counter spells at this point. Absorb a Tempest Gin. Okay. Wizard's Retort in response. They are now tapped out. Going to combat Dawn of Hope. And chump away. It's risky, but while they're tapped out, I am going to Chemisters. Paid off, since I did hit another land, and that was the big thing I wanted to hit. Although ideally, drawing a board wipe for the next turn would have been the best. They attack, Dawn of Hope. And I'm at 8 lands, so at some point, there is the potential that I can just um, Dawn of Hope 3 times and kill off the Trickster. I'm going to go ahead and let that resolve. I don't think I need to counter it immediately. And this will let me draw a card off of my chump block. Okay, so 37 cards, 4 of them are sweepers that we need to draw. Um, yeah, I don't think I need to do anything on my turn right now. I think I'm gonna stick with just my cheap Dawn of Hope, don't die plan. Make sure I leave up Absorb. And end of turn, go for the Ritual. I assume their hand is basically just counterspells. But if their hand is just Spell Pierces, those are good counterspells for them to have, for me. Okay, resolve the first one. Activate Dawn of Hope. Second, then we can get a third activation and then pass the turn with all of my mana up. And this will kill off the Trickster and leave me with my entire hand other than the Clear the Mines as valid options to play. Yeah, double Wilderness Reclamation definitely paid off there. Herald is fine. I'm not overly concerned with them playing a 1/1. Yeah, and they can't attack with the Trickster anymore. The Chemister is discarding a Clear the Mind. Okay, settle with triple absorb in hand. I am definitely okay with that. I don't care about these, and I don't want to use my mana to draw cards. What I need to do is kill all of their stuff, and they just concede to that. That definitely worked out for us. That was the cheesiest win I have gotten with this deck. That was pretty hilarious, and I did not see it playing out like that. Um, we did have the advantage of that being a very slow start from Mono Blue with no 1-drop, and then finally a turn 3 Trickster. But that was actually just really funny. Well, I will be back in a minute with the next game. Here we go for game number 5. This has the potential to be a very good hand. If we can hit a 4th land, then... Oh, and our opponent's on the Moldafy? Yeah, so if they just don't have interaction, there's potential we just win before they can actually do anything to us. Hmm. Merfolk. Okay. Yeah, Moldafy 1-lander, and I assume they were digging... Oh, this can't dig for lands, right. Okay, well, that wasn't much of a game, but I'll be back with game 6. Alright, game 6 after the game 5 non-game. I'm going to go ahead and keep this. It's a bit awkward only having shock lands. Okay, some kind of green beatdown deck. My sweepers should be really good here. This is probably Golgari or Sultai. Most commonly played these. Yep, Sultai. I'm gonna go ahead and shock this in, representing the counterspell. Carnage Tyrant is the last thing I wanted to see. And if I don't draw 4th land, this is gonna get really bad really fast. Okay, so I need to hit lands 4 and 5. essentially back to back. Just land 4. Hopefully they don't have a counterspell. And hopefully they aren't running the Thrashing Brontodon to kill this. Have to take 7. Thankfully, I have the Absorb for Vivian. Vivian killing the Wilderness Reclamation would hurt. And no land. I do have 2 life gain spells, so I'm not dead on board. Well, I'm not anyway, because they only have 9 power. But this is close, and not a spot I like being in. Okay, Crassus. Should not be excited about them just drawing a bunch of cards, but them not killing our Wilderness Reclamation, so we get to untap with the Cleansing Nova already in hand, that is not a bad spot. And we're at 10 life with 6 mana open. Um, I think basically every situation here is just me, End of Turn Growth Spiral, and Chemist's Insight. Especially if they only have a Llanowar Elf. I should have played the Arch there. That was a just playing fast, easy misplay. There's no need to try and get value out of these last 2 lands right now. Yeah, here comes back the Carnage Tyrant. Thank you for leading out with the Vivian first. Oh, they just concede. Okay. Double Absorb for double Vivian. That is not a win I was expecting, but I am definitely okay with it. I'll be back in a minute with another round. Here we go for round 7. 2 quick, easy wins in a row. See what happens here. Awkward, but I'm gonna go ahead and keep it. With 3 or 4 of the 5 spells in hand cantripping, I am okay with keeping only a 2-lander on the play. Gonna go ahead and run out the Revitalize. It's awkward, but I think I have to do that. Getting the Ritual cast, I think, is going to be my best bet here. I I would like to cast the Growth Spiral, but I just don't want to risk not getting the 4th and then 5th land off of 2 consecutive draws. And I'd rather go up for life than risk not hitting. They're afraid of something. I don't know what they're. Okay, they're playing around something. I don't know what. What would I have shocked in that would scare them? Okay, so I did hit a fourth land. It is a turn late, and it did come in tapped. So that's 12 damage in one turn so far. 15 and 17 damage in a single turn. That's why mono red is scary. I do have a Wilderness Reclamation on the board though, which means okay, I have to take 2 damage off of this, going to 4. Yeah, I think I have to counter that. And I am just dead. Yeah. That was a lot of doing nothing and then a super explosive turn for the kill. That's pretty much the mono red matchup. And I will be back in a moment with round 8. Okay, so I'm gonna have to mulligan this. It had potential to be really good, but potential isn't something I can keep. Absorb could be good, but I do need white mana here. Okay, drawing a white source would be very good. Thought Erasure, I assume they take Growth Spiral. They could take Wilderness Reclamation too, yeah. Gonna go ahead and run out the island since they've seen it. They know all but one of the cards in my hand right now, which isn't something I want to be in a situation with against Esper. Let's see. That was a misclick. Yeah, that was supposed to kill Search or force out a counterspell. Uh, Hopefully that doesn't just cost me the game. Okay, this is going to be a hard spot to come back from. I know we're not actually behind yet, but Teferi basically is sort of a nail in the coffin. Um, a resolved Teferi, essentially my only way of removing it is Dawn of Hope. Okay, there's the first counter spell. Generally, they have somewhere between 7 and 9 more. Most are playing 4 Absorb, 4 Sinister Sabotage, and then 2, some mix of like 2 Negate, 2 Syncopates, 1 and 1, something like that. There's also the possibility this is the Devious Cover Up counterspell version, um, where they're trying to cycle Mastermind's acquisition. I really just need action, so I'm gonna go ahead and sack this. Okay, that gets countered. Let's see if I can draw effectively anything. That gets countered. And if they ultimate Teferi, I am just conceding. Since that emblem isn't something I can actually win through. Yeah. And there's the next one. Good game. There's no real way to actually come back against this, especially with literally no way to actually play anything. Or nothing to actually play. Okay, so going to go ahead and do a quick wrap up. Matches went pretty well. 5-3 is a pretty good record. Um, the deck basically repaid the entry fee, which is a good thing to do. Anytime you can actually make a profit and start building up gold in this game, definitely helpful. Overall, I think the deck is a ton of fun to play. Um, really, like the one concern I have for this deck is sometimes you just don't find either of these or either of these, and you kind of just get hosed. Um, like against some decks, especially like you saw against Esper, if you just don't get a win condition out fast enough, then they get to resolve Teferi unthreatened, and you can just get overwhelmed from there. Um, the other thing is, this could be changed out for something else. If you wanted to run a different card draw spell, that would be good. It has potential. The big thing here is some turns you really just want to play this and then activate Dawn of Hope to draw extra cards off of it, which reduces the fizzle chance on turns where you're trying to combo off and mill them out with Psychic Corrosion. Didn't see too many of those, and a couple of our wins were just cheap wins because we were playing Absorb. Um, Overall, though, I think this deck definitely is in a good spot. Uh, the real issue is just not having Planeswalker interaction. So with War of the Spark coming, that could be a real issue if Planeswalkers actually take over Standard. But I would also expect White is most likely going to get something that does interact with Planeswalkers, meaning that you could replace these or a mix of these with something in white that would interact with those planeswalkers, or potentially something in blue or green, but that's less likely. This deck is a ton of fun to play. It has potential to just absolutely ruin people in a single turn. Um, like you saw with only one, I think it was one or two Wilderness Reclamations, able to draw 14 cards in a single turn and mill my opponent out. That is a pretty good spot. Um, and if you're trying to play like Climb with Ranked, this has decent matchups against basically everything, which is good. And if you wanted, you could add a sideboard to this deck and actually make it a best of three deck that you could try and climb ranked or play other constructed or even just take it to F&M. Since this deck is fairly cheap, um, basically the only cards that actually cost anything are the lands, and the absorbs cost a little bit. Basically everything else is uncommons though, commons and uncommons. Like Dawn of Hope is cheap because it's a one or two of, and it's only a rare, not a mythic. Um, Arch is cheap. It's again, it is just the lands that actually cost money. If you were intending to build this deck and take it to Friday Night Magic or something like that, and if you were to add a sideboard, I would basically retool this into a Bant control deck, adding in um, like Carnage Tyrant against other control, or Teferi to have a more consistent win condition. Um, bring in more removal. Like if you're one of the biggest decks in Standard right now is Sultai. So against that, you could basically just bring in 4 Cleansing Novas and be just every single turn, I'm wrathing the board. Um, so there is definitely potential for this deck to get better, and overall, it is a ton of fun to play. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you all for watching.